He was born a loser, mocked by trainers, written off, before he ever really raced. But by the end of 1938, this crooked-legged, undersized horse had generated more newspaper coverage than President Roosevelt, more than Hitler, more than Mussolini. A racehorse, outpacing the biggest names on the planet, and becoming a symbol of hope for a broken nation. This is the story of Seabiscuit.
1938 was to be the next big hullabaloo match race. The West Coast favorite was a rags to riches horse, Seabiscuit, purchased for $2,500.
And it's not really a story about a horse. It's a story about what happens when everyone gives up on you, except one or two people who refuse to. Quick context first, because it matters more than you'd think. This is the late 1930s. The Great Depression hadn't ended. It had just become permanent furniture in people's lives. Men who used to run their own businesses were standing in soup lines. Nobody was in the mood for stories about winners who'd always been winning. 3 men end up around this horse, and none of them fit the part. Charles Howard made his money selling cars. Right place, right time. But then his teenage son died in an accident on the family property, and the money stopped meaning anything. He needed something to fix, or at least something to focus on that wasn't grief. Tom Smith was the trainer, and calling him quiet undersells it. The man had spent years alone out west, breaking wild horses. He trusted animals more than he trusted people. The racing establishment didn't take him seriously. He didn't care. And then there's Red Pollard, the jockey, blind in one eye, which he'd hidden from almost everyone. Bones broken and reset so many times, his body was basically held together with scar tissue. By the time he met this horse, most trainers had quietly stopped returning his calls. None of these 3 men had a reputation left to protect, which, weirdly, is probably why they were the only ones willing to bet on a horse everyone else had already written off. Now, the horse himself. Not an impressive animal to look at. Short, stocky, legs that didn't quite line up right, and lazy. Stable hands used to joke he'd rather nap than run. It wasn't really a joke. Most people in racing had already made up their minds. Bad horse. Not worth the feed. Tom Smith saw it differently. His theory, and it wasn't a popular one, was that Seabiscuit hadn't failed because he lacked talent. He'd failed because he'd been handled like a machine his whole life. Raced too often. Pushed too hard. Never given a reason to actually want to run. So Smith did something almost nobody else in the sport bothered doing. He slowed everything down, gave the horse a goat for company, and later, a stray dog that just showed up one day and stuck around. Let him rest when he needed rest, instead of running him into the ground. And here's the thing. It worked. Not overnight. Not dramatically. Just, race by race, a little more fight showing up each time. Then Red Pollard climbed into the saddle. And something about that pairing clicked in a way nobody could really explain. Maybe it takes one overlooked thing to recognize another. They started winning. Not everything, but enough that people noticed. By 1937, Seabiscuit was a full-blown phenomenon. Crowds packed the rail just to watch him work out in the mornings. For a country that felt like it had been losing for a decade straight, this ugly, crooked-legged horse who kept refusing to lose had become something people needed to believe in. Then, in February 1938, everything nearly fell apart. And not because of the horse. Red Pollard was training a different horse entirely. It went down badly, crushed him underneath it. The injuries were bad enough that he couldn't ride at all, not in the next big race, and, as it turned out, not in the one race the entire country actually cared about. Because by this point, everyone wanted one thing. Seabiscuit against War Admiral, the reigning Triple Crown champion. And Pollard, the man who'd made Seabiscuit who he was, would have to watch it happen from the sidelines. The match of the country. November 1st, 1938. Pimlico Racecourse. In one corner, War Admiral, Triple Crown winner. Bred for greatness, in the most literal sense. His whole existence was designed to produce exactly this moment. East Coast racing royalty. In the other, Seabiscuit. Bought for a fraction of what a real contender costs. Working-class origins. The horse of the Depression. The horse of everyone who'd ever been told they didn't have what it takes. With Pollard sidelined, the ride went to his close friend, jockey George Wolfe. And the night before the race, Pollard, still recovering, still unable to walk right, sat down with Wolf and told him exactly how to ride his horse. Let War Admiral catch up. Let Seabiscuit see him. Then, ask for everything. Something like 40 million people, a third of the entire country, stopped whatever they were doing and gathered around radios. It was, by most measures, the biggest single media event of the year. The gate opens. Seabiscuit jumps to an early lead, which surprises everyone. That's not how he usually runs. War Admiral claws back, pulls and for a stretch, it looks exactly like it's supposed to look. The better-bred horse, doing what better-bred horses do. Then Wolf does exactly what his injured friend told him to do the night before. He eases up, just enough to let Seabiscuit see his rival. And then, he asks for everything. Seabiscuit gives it, pulls away in the stretch, wins by 4 lengths. The horse Pollard built won the biggest race of the century, with Pollard's strategy, in Pollard's saddle, ridden by someone else, because Pollard himself couldn't be there. That's its own kind of heartbreak, if you sit with it for a second. You'd think a win like that would be the ending. It wasn't. About 6 weeks after beating War Admiral, Seabiscuit himself went down. A ruptured ligament, the kind of injury that usually means retirement, if not worse. Most people assumed that was it. Howard refused to say the word retirement. Instead, he sent the horse back to the ranch in California for what he called a long rest. And there, healing at the same time, in the same place, were 2 broken bodies. A horse who wasn't supposed to run again, and a jockey who wasn't supposed to walk right again. They recovered side by side. Long, slow, limping walks around the property, a little farther every day. In 1940, they came back. Together, finally, in the same race, for the one prize that had slipped away from Seabiscuit twice before by the barest possible margin, the Santa Anita Handicap. Seabiscuit was 7 years old by then. Ancient, for a racehorse. He ran it anyway. Pollard, back in the saddle, for the first time since his injury. And they won. When Seabiscuit retired, he was the highest-earning racehorse in American history, up to that point. But if you only remember the money, you're missing the point. What people actually needed, standing in those bread lines, wondering if effort still counted for anything, was proof. Proof that being written off isn't the same as being finished. Nobody's still talking about horse racing statistics from 1938. They're talking about a horse everybody gave up on. A jockey who coached his own replacement from a hospital bed. And a comeback that took 2 of them, together, to actually finish. If the whole world had already decided you were done, would you have believed them? Seabiscuit didn't. Neither did Pollard. That's the story.
It's horse against horse. Both of them driving. Seabiscuit leads by a length. Now Seabiscuit by a length and a half. Wolf has put away his whip. Seabiscuit by 3. Seabiscuit by 3. Seabiscuit is the winner by 4 lengths. And you never saw such a wild crowd. Seabiscuit the winner by 4 lengths. Trying to drown this crowd out here. They're roaring around me.
Subscribe hooflore for more incredible horse stories.